I still don't know why I agreed to cover that late shift on Christmas Eve. I was 23, broke, and working part-time at a small hardware store in Cedar Glen. The place sat right on the edge of the woods, far enough from the main road that when night came, the silence always felt heavy. That evening, snow kept piling up outside. The lot was empty. Most people were home with their families. I remember thinking how quiet everything felt. Too quiet. Around 8:30 p.m., I was sweeping near the back aisle when I heard the front door chime. Not the soft chime it usually made. This one rang long and sharp, like someone had pushed the door open too hard. I walked to the counter expecting to see a customer shaking snow off their coat, but no one was there. The door was shut. The glass hadn't fogged either, which meant it hadn't recently been opened. I stood there a moment listening. I tried to brush it off, blaming the old sensor. 10 minutes later, it happened again. This time the chime was even louder. I stepped out from behind the counter and called, "Hello? We're open if you need anything." No response. I checked every aisle. Nothing. But the moment I walked past the garden section, I felt something cold behind me, like someone had leaned in close enough for their breath to touch the back of my neck. I spun around. The air smelled like damp pine, as if someone had been standing there soaked from the woods. I went back to the aisle where the Christmas decorations were displayed. One of the artificial trees, tall, flocked with fake snow, was shaking lightly, as if something had brushed past it. For a second I thought maybe the heating vent had kicked on, but the store was silent and still. At 9:05 the manager texted, saying I could close early due to the storm. I didn't wait. I hurried to lock the front door, but when I reached it, the deadbolt was already slid into place. I hadn't locked it. I know I hadn't. My hand was shaking a little as I unlocked it again, just to test the mechanism. It worked perfectly. Nothing jammed or stuck. When I went to grab my backpack from the employee room, the lights flickered. Not the whole store, just the hallway to the back exit. The lights buzzed, dimmed, and then held steady again. But someone had drawn a line through the dust on the door window. A vertical line. Fresh. I wiped it with my glove, and my stomach knotted when I realized the dust smear was still slightly wet from whatever finger had made it. There was no one else in the building. I didn't hear the chime this time. I heard humming. Soft. Low. Off-key. It was coming from the front of the store. A Christmas tune, but slowed down, broken in places. I wanted to believe it was the radio, except we hadn't played music in the store all week. I gripped my phone, walked toward the sound, and each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the last aisle before the front counter, the humming stopped. And then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving just around the end of the aisle. I wasn't alone, or at least something wanted me to think I wasn't. My instinct told me to stay still, but curiosity always betrays people in stories like this. I stepped forward and leaned just enough to see down the aisle. No one. The floor showed only one set of tracks, mine. But I kept hearing those footsteps. They circled the shelves, never getting closer or farther. It felt like they were pacing around me. Then something rolled across the floor and bumped my shoe. A silver ornament from the Christmas display. I hadn't touched any ornaments that night. When I crouched to pick it up, I saw something reflected in the chrome surface. Not a face. Not even a shape. Just movement, dark, fast, like someone ducked behind the shelves the moment I looked. That was enough. I grabbed my bag and rushed toward the front. The exit sign glowed red above the door. I had maybe 20 steps left. That was when every string of Christmas lights in the store turned on at once. They weren't even plugged in. We had unplugged the whole section earlier to avoid overload with the heaters running. But now every strand flickered with a dull, pulsing glow, like they were syncing with something breathing. The humming returned. Close. Much closer. And layered now, like more than one voice, humming the same broken tune. I bolted. When I pushed the front door open, the cold hit me, so hard it felt like a slap. The snow outside had gathered up to my shins. I didn't stop to lock the door. I just ran to my car. Halfway there, I glanced back. There was someone standing inside the store. A tall figure behind the glass silhouette, completely, still head slightly tilted like they were studying me. The lights behind them flickered again. I pressed the keys so hard my thumb stung. When I finally got the engine started, every light in the building shut off at once. The figure vanished into the darkness. I sped out of the lot so fast the tires slipped. As my car reached the road, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but panic makes you do strange things. I put on speaker. Nothing. Not breathing. Not static. Just humming. That same Broken Christmas, tuned soft and slow. I threw my phone into the passenger seat and drove home without stopping. I didn't go back to work the next day. In fact, I didn't return at all. When a manager called asking why I'd quit, I told him the truth. Someone else had been in the store. He didn't believe me. Said the security cameras hadn't captured anything unusual. He emailed me a clip anyway. When I opened it, the footage showed me walking through the aisles looking nervous, checking corners, gripping my phone. But behind me, nothing. Every time I jerked around or stared into empty space, the camera saw no one. But at the very end, right as I ran for the door, one ornament from the Christmas display rolled off the shelf on its own. The clip ended there. To this day, I still hear that humming whenever Christmas gets close. It comes at night, faint at first, then steady. Like whatever was in that store never left. Like it remembers me. And every Christmas Eve when the air gets cold enough, I swear I smell damn pine again. It was last Christmas, and I was staying at my cousin Daniel's place in northern Michigan. His house sits on the edge of a quiet stretch of forest. No neighbors close by, no street lamps, just a long road that disappears into trees thick enough to swallow sound. I had gone there to get away for a bit. The holidays were rough that year. My mom had passed away in October, and I wasn't exactly in the mood for celebrations. Daniel knew that, so he offered me a room and some space. I figured a quiet Christmas might help clear my head. I didn't know I was walking into the most frightening night of my life. Christmas Eve was calm. Snow fell in slow, heavy flakes that made everything look soft. Inside, we drank hot chocolate, watched some mindless holiday movie, and talked about nothing important. It was the kind of night that should have felt peaceful, and it did until around midnight. Daniel had gone to bed early, and I was alone in the living room, scrolling my phone. The house was silent except for the heater and the occasional pop of wood in the fireplace. At some point, I realized the heater had stopped. The fire had burned low. When I stood up to add a log, I felt something, a soft vibration under the floor, like someone walking in the basement. I froze. Daniel's basement wasn't finished. It was basically a cold storage space. No reason for anyone to be down there. I listened again. Another step. Slow, heavy, careful. For a moment, I thought maybe it was the house settling. That's what I wanted to believe. But the steps were too distinct, too steady. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked toward the basement door. Each step felt heavy. My breathing grew tight. I wasn't sure if I wanted to open it or run straight back to my room. But curiosity beats fear in stupid moments. The basement door was cracked open. I was sure it had been closed earlier. I pushed it wider. My flashlight beam shook over the stairs. The air that drifted up was colder than outside. Something was wrong. My instincts kept yelling at me to shut the door and go to bed, but I couldn't. I called out softly, "Daniel, you down there?" Silence. I took a few steps down enough to see the basement floor. My light swept across the cement. Nothing moved. The place was empty. Boxes stacked along the walls. Tools hanging. The old furnace. Then my light hit something in the corner. A shape. Small. Low to the ground. It looked like a bundle of sticks. But the moment my flashlight landed on it, it shifted. Not much. Just a tiny, deliberate movement. Like it had been waiting for me to notice. My throat tightened. I backed up the stairs slowly, eyes locked on the corner. Whatever it was, it kept still, but the air around me changed, thicker, colder, heavier than before. I shut the door, locked it, and for the first time that night, I felt genuinely afraid. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it was nothing, a shadow, nerves, grief messing with my head. But the fear wouldn't settle. It stuck to me like frost. I sat back on the couch and tried to slow my breathing, but the house didn't feel the same anymore. It felt invaded. About 20 minutes passed before I heard it again. Not footsteps this time. Humming. A soft, broken humming drifting through the floorboards. The kind of sound someone makes when they don't know the tune, just the rhythm. Slow, shaky, almost childlike. Every hair on my body rose. I stood up staring at the basement door from across the room. The humming continued steady and low like it was coming from the bottom of the stairs. I went straight to Daniel's room and shook him awake. At first he was annoyed, half asleep, until he saw my face. I told him what I heard. He frowned, grabbed a flashlight, and walked out with me. He didn't hesitate. He went right to the basement door, unlocked it, and swung it open. The humming stopped instantly. Daniel called out again. Nothing. He took a few steps down, shining the light around. No one's here, he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. Maybe the furnace made a weird sound. I knew it wasn't the furnace. I wasn't going crazy. He came back up and shut the door. We'll check in the morning, he said. Just try to sleep. I didn't sleep. I sat awake in the guest room, listening to the house, settled, waiting for any small noise. Every sound felt like it meant something. I finally drifted off around 4 a.m. In the morning, Daniel and I went back to the basement, this time with the lights on. Sunlight came through a tiny window, making the space look harmless. Normal. No humming. No footsteps. No cold air. We walked around the whole room. Nothing seemed out of place except for the corner where I'd seen the bundle of sticks. It was gone. Daniel tried to brush it off, saying, maybe I missaw something. Maybe the shadows tricked me. I wanted to believe him, but I knew what I saw. And I knew something moved. When I got home the next day, I felt relieved to be away from that basement, away from that cold humming. But that relief lasted only a week. On New Year's Eve, a small package showed up at my door. No return address. No note. Just my name written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single object wrapped in paper. A small bundle of sticks. The exact size. The exact shape. The moment I touched it, that same cold feeling from the basement hit me again, crawling up the back of my neck. I didn't keep it. I didn't show anyone. I threw it into a dumpster behind a grocery store. But sometimes, especially around Christmas, I swear I still hear that faint, broken humming from somewhere far away. Like whatever was in that basement never really stayed behind. It found me, and it knows where to come back.